Welcome to the Screen Guide Podcast, a podcast aimed at bringing context, commentary, and conversation to the blank that you love.
I'm your host, Derrick.
And I'm Daniel.
What's the blank that we're filling in today, Daniel?
Today, we're going to be talking about two of the most popular films of the year. We'll be breaking down Backrooms and Obsession.
Plus, we'll be talking about our top 5 directorial debuts. But first, what have you been watching recently, Daniel?
Well, it's the beginning of June, so I've been on a real Pride Month kick. So I'll just break down like a few. I've been doing a lot of Greg Araki's filmography, so Smiley Face, Kaboom, and then I hit some big heavy hitters. So the two that I would definitely recommend people check out. I'm not breaking ground here. Paris is Burning. This is a 5 out of 5 documentary that's on Criterion Channel, and another one on Criterion Channel is Beau Travail. Both of these I watched yesterday. I decided to take down some juggernauts, and yeah, I mean, check those out. And then more than half of Greg Araki's filmography is streaming, so people can check those out too. Derrick, what have you been watching?
Well, I watched one of your favorite noirs of all time, In a Lonely Place. Yes. Incredible film. Humphrey Bogart is phenomenal in it. I also watched, like you said, a Pride Month flick in Neptune Frost. It is this Afrofuturistic, anti-colonial, ultraviolet film. It is one of the most genre-bending, but also gender-bending films that I've seen in a while. Is it a movie that I completely understand? No. But was I loving every second of it? 100%. And then I also...
Where can people watch that?
Neptune Frost is on Canopy.
Oh,
so
cool.
If you have a library card, definitely check that out that way. I used to be on the Criterion Channel, so hopefully it will come back. But that is one of my favorite films that I've seen even this year, let alone just in June.
Cool. And I cut you off. You said you had one more thing that you've been watching recently?
Well, we were talking about movies that we loved, and then I've also seen Masters of the Universe, which you have a higher rating for it,
Sure.
and maybe even love for it. You wanted a sequel, but for me, I found Masters of the Universe to be a movie that encapsulates exactly what I do not like in modern blockbusters. And I tried my hardest to have fun, turn off my brain, all the disclaimers that go ahead with the movies like this. But this movie is just not good for me. The humor did not land, visuals did not land. It just, maybe I'm a curmudgeon, but I don't know.
I've always called you a curmudgeon, but to be clear for the audience, Derrick has this movie at, I believe, a 1.5, and I have it at a 2.5. This is not a film that I'm going to say, everyone go see it. There's a reason why we are not covering Masters of the Universe on the podcast today. And so while Derrick's correct that I do have this a little bit higher, and I would welcome a sequel because I would hope in a sequel they could actually find their footing and go in a direction. Maybe it's because I'm an optimist that I think with the direction that film ends on, it feels like they're actually maybe embracing the content that they are rather than kind of undercutting it on every turn. But yeah, this is not the film that we've come to talk about today because that's what we've been watching. We've been watching Masters of the Universe. We've been watching so many fun films, but everyone seems to be watching the two biggest horror movies of the year, Obsession and Backrooms, right? Two films that people are like, why are we comparing them? Derrick and I are not going to be comparing them, although maybe we'll say which is better at the end.
Bit, yeah.
Maybe a little bit. Where do you want to start? Obsession, Cory Barker's Obsession, or Kane Parsons' Backrooms?
I feel like we need to tackle Obsession. That is a film. I mean, you also saw this at a film festival. I saw it at the Dallas International Film Festival a few weeks back. And even before that, we were hearing so much buzz of this is going to be the horror film of the year. And I think it's come out to be that. People have clamored to see this film. Week after week has gotten so much money at the box office, just grown. I think this is the first weekend that it will actually decline, but not by much. It's still people are talking about it, theory videos, all the things. I feel like we have to start here.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is a film, right? If people haven't seen this, which based on the box office, I feel like everyone listening has seen this. This is the directorial debut from Cory Barker. It follows a character named Bear who has a a crush is the way that the film describes it. I would maybe say an obsession with a childhood friend, and he makes a wish on an item for his this friend to be more obsessed with him, to love him more than anything else in the entire world, and chaos ensues. And this is a film that has taken the world by storm. It's taking like theory TikTok by storm. Well, either theory or breakdown. Like, I don't know if this is like, there have been a lot of theories for this. It feels more of like just like a breakdown film than like a
Yeah.
theorizing film for me, at least. Although I love all my friends who have been doing kind of more theorized videos about it. But it's really ignited the world. I guess I wanted to start with this question. Why do you think Obsession is the movie that is taking general audiences by storm, and why do you think this is the one that is igniting people the way it is?
That's a great question, and one that I think I've been kind of reflecting on, because it's a solid horror film. And I think historically, when we look at the kind of breakout films from past decades, for some reason, horror is one of those flicks. Like if we look back, whether it's Get Out in the year previous, or, what's Night of the Living Dead from George Romero, there are some directorial debuts from directors that kind of just push the envelope forward. So I think that's my first kind of guess, is there's something about horror and something about directorial debuts, and when they're done well, people want to go see them in a theater. And so that's my first kind of reason. And my second reason is, I think, just what the movie is about. It feels like a very Gen Z movie in the best way. I think a film that delves into male loneliness, into the idea of cowardice in men, and agency for women. I think there's just some things that a Gen Z audience will kind of clamor to, and they're going to the box office. They're going to the movies to see this movie.
Yeah, I think even combining those two things, right? The horror movies you mentioned all are social commentary pieces. Both Get Out and Night of the Living Dead are saying something about the Black experience in America. And this film, although pretty white, but
Is
like
it saying? Is it
no,
saying something
it
about
is
the
not
Black
saying about the
experience
Black
in
experience in America.
America?
It is saying something about dating culture. It's
Yeah.
saying something about, as you said, the male loneliness issue. I think it's also the age of these characters who Curry Barker decided to focus on, because the target audience, the people that can go see this film, are either right before are these characters' ages, they are these characters' ages, or they were these characters' ages recently. So there's a relatability factor. Even if we are not an Ian, we definitely aren't a Bear, we're not a Nikki, we can explore and be like, oh, we've known a Bear. We known someone who has lost themselves so much into an obsessive love that they become a monster. Like we've known someone, we've like the work that I do, we've known people in kind of codependent relationships. And so there is a relatability factor around the characters and what they're going through, even if none of us either have a One Wish Willow or have had a One Wish Willow used upon us. And it's brought out both the best and the worst of the internet, because we have the contingent of people that are really thinking critically about this character of Nikki and the agency that she loses and the control that she's under. And like, I mean, that really powerful moment where she's like, Bear, I've never been with you, right? Like
Yeah.
these things really resonate, because so many people have stories of losing their autonomy. And then we also have the contingent of people online that are the Bears, or Bear's not that
Yeah.
bad, or Ian's the true villain. And those conversations either can be rich or very surface level, but they're going everywhere. And I think without the internet, the film wouldn't have been made, and also wouldn't be blowing up as it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. The internet, I think, has, when the internet does claim a movie of being kind of the movie that you kind of have to go see in a theater, this is one of those experiences that, when you're on the internet, you are going to scroll past an Obsession post. You're going to scroll past someone, whether it's just a quick 30-second maybe recording of a screen, which I don't always love, but someone is saying, go watch this movie. They're saying, go break this down, kind of have an understanding of it. And I think a big part of it too is you have to go see this early. Like, you almost have to get around the curve of people that might spoil this movie for you, even though there's nothing spoiler-ish that's happening, not anything huge reveals, but you want to be a part of the conversation. You want to be a part of breaking it down, analyzing it, kind of having your own interpretation of it, which I love. And also at the same time, I have kind of been tired generally of, I don't know if it's over analyzing, but like you said, taking things from the movie that aren't always a constructive takeaway and
Mm.
also may not even be informed from the film. That's sometimes where I struggle when with Obsession. Sometimes people will take something and be like, oh, this didn't even happen in the film, but this is what I believe happened. And then when you actually go into it, it's just, it can be a slippery slope. And that's a whole conversation about art interpretation and how we do it. But I do think, once again, people are trying to have their own personal experiences with this film, and I can't take that away from people.
Yeah, I think I have less of an issue with the theorizing or the kind of like extra textualizing of the film because I think we're always bringing ourselves to the art, whether it is our background, our education, our life experiences. Like a lot of those interpretations that maybe aren't built into the film are coming from people's real life experiences and informing how they engage in the art, what they're taking away from the art, right? Like I've seen a lot of takes where I'm like, that's not how I saw it because either that's not my life experience or it's not it's not necessarily in the text, but I welcome that because I do think that, this is an example of art as therapy or an art as healing process of what people can bring to the film or from the film. This is what I do all the time, but I think it's two different conversations about like the quality of the film and the conversations we're having around the film. And maybe, I'm responsible for this by even asking you like, why do you think this blew up? Because I even skipped past the question like, hey, Derek, what did you think of the craft of this film? What did you think about the film itself? Like, I did that by asking my initial question. So, can we rewind for a second? Can we, like, kind of talk about the craft in Cory Barker's Obsession that was made for less than $1 million and was filmed in Cory Barker's apartment? This film, did not need to blow up based on, like, the money or the craft in it. Like, what do you think about Obsession?
I mean, when it comes to the craft, for an indie film, like you said, made for $1 million is incredible. Even the way it looks is well, I mean, the visual language that you get from watching this film creates a sense of atmospheric horror for me. So I sit watching this movie and I have a tense feeling, whether it's the kind of shallow depth of field that you get to see, kind of focusing in on Bear's character, especially Nikki's character of Indy Navarrete. The way that they craft these images to make you just feel so eerie, I think is a big reason why this film works in many ways. Also, the score that kind of comes in at different moments is also just helps to create this sense of eeriness and this sense of unease that you're watching this entire film. And so I think it's just an effective horror film that when we look at modern horror films in general, lack the patience to sit
Mm.
in the unease. I think a lot of films are very quick to scare and to create fear through a jump scare or, kind of just wait into it. And this has jump scares, but maybe the best use of a jump scare that I think I've seen in recent memory. There is one in particular that genuinely made me jump out of my seat, even though I knew something was going to happen, but it's because they built it up. They were patient enough. And that's what I think for a directorial debut is so astounding to me, because this felt like something that would be explored with a more veteran type of director
Mm.
where you can build up to that. And once again, build in that patience. So as for film with form and craft, I think this is a great directorial debut that I've been pleasantly surprised to see people kind of clamoring to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you're talking about came out of the low budget. Like the way that it's lit, the way that it is shot, they wouldn't have had to do that if it wasn't shot in Curry Barker's apartment and if they had like a legit budget for good cinematography. Not to say that the cinematography is bad, but it is by necessity. It feels like it is they're just having the character in focus and everything else kind of like out of focus. I think the way that Michael Sharkey Floor described it was like portrait mode a little bit, but it
Cool.
is because of the budget that they have. And because they, if they had everything in focus, you would see duct tape holding the whole film together in some ways. And I always love when directors are working almost not with both hands tied behind their backs, but up against a wall, right? Like we've seen some of the best directors. The two of us, we're going to talk about best directorial debuts later, but a lot of the best directorial debuts come from a place of hunger and come from a place of being pushed against a wall and not having all the resources at your disposal. And so I think that's what we see here. And looking at the acting of it all, Skylar Zern casting, they brought together a cast of some unknown, some of Curry Barker's friends, one Andy Richter. And I think the thing that makes this film work without Skylar Zern's casting, without the casting of Indy Navarrete or like Michael or like even having, Megan Lawless in there, I don't think the film would work. Obviously we don't know, but especially the Indy Navarrete performance, she anchors this film in
Yeah.
such a powerful way by just like sheer abandon, like an actor who just gives her all to the role.
Yeah. You feel that she has put her everything into it. Like, and I would think I was watching an interview between her and Curry Barker, and she just was exclaiming that Curry kind of let her, which, as a director, give takes and give ideas into whose Nikki's character would be in this very authentic way. And I think Curry was saying in the same way, he's giving her direction in a way that's like, hey, do this in front of this cast and crew that could be awkward to do, or could be, I think in the filmmaking process may just be weird or awkward, and then it comes back and is translated into like, whoa, that was actually really creepy. That
Right.
actually for an audience member, we feel something maybe different than in that particular moment that she was experiencing, but we feel that. I think that's a lot of people are resonating with this, with not Nikki's character, but her performance. Like her performance is something that I know you maybe have a prediction that she won't be nominated for an Oscar. I think there is more potential for her being nominated for an Oscar in some way or some capacity. I'm not 100%. I think I'm a little bit higher on that percentage. Not that the Oscars have always been the marker of what's a great performance or not. Either way, she deserves the recognition. But I think this is a stellar performance that should be celebrated. And I think this might be, even though precursors have not said in the past that she should, I think she has a chance of at least being nominated this year for an Oscar.
I made that video the first week when I said I made a video of people who haven't seen it where I said I just don't think it's going to happen. And I still stand by that based on precedent, right? Any comp that people came up with, people were like, well, Blumhouse did get J.K. Simmons a nomination and win in supporting. And I'm sorry, Indy Navarrete is not as known as J.K. Simmons was. They also said, well, we have the lovely performance in Misery. And like that was one of her feature film debuts. Look at who produced the film. Also look at that it's based off a Stephen King novel. Like there are all so many things that made that one make sense for a nomination. And then the one that people said the most was Honora and Mikey Madison. And I think Obsession's a great movie. It's in my top 10 of the year of the 50 films that I've seen. And I'm sorry, this is not a Palme d'Or winner. This is not a film directed by Sean Baker. And then the final thing that people say is like, well, if we can't get her in the lead, we can get her in supporting. And I don't think she is a supporting character in this film. I think she is a co-lead. I understand that it's from Bear's perspective, but perspective is not necessarily what makes a lead or supporting. Now, mind you, people could say, hey, in Derrick's favorite movie last year, Sentimental Value, Stellan Skarsgård did get a supporting when he is a co-lead. And so I could understand that. But I still don't see it happening from Blumhouse. The more money it makes, the more it gets pushed forward, the more it's into the conversation, because like Obsession was supposed to go to digital in June and it's not going to digital anymore, right? It is staying in theaters for now. So the more that happens, then maybe it can push into it. But part of the conversation has to be like, who else might get nominated to kick her out? And like Renata Reinsve is going to be up again. We're probably going to have a Scarlett Johansson up for her film this year. Like there are so many well-regarded, well-named actors. And it's not to say that an unknown can't break through, but an unknown from an under a million, like it's just never happened. And so I'm looking at precedent. I'd love to be wrong because this is one of my favorite movies of the favorite performances of the year. And I have side thoughts about, like, why is it one of my favorite performances of the year? Is she given a cheat code by being able to play so many things, right? It's kind of like the Hamnet of it all of, like, she gets to play grief, she gets to play
Yeah.
anger, she gets to play subtlety, and for me, when I think, like, movies or performances that I really want shout outs, it's more like Eddick's, performance in Blue Heron, it's more like Daniel Brooks's performance in If I Go, Will They Miss Me? These kind of more subtle, small performances, but, we've been beating that drum since first episode, but yeah, I think if there's a chance for this to get any awards, it's a nomination there. And if not, I think the chances of awards are just the fact that Indian Already is going to get cast in everything now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think part of the reason I say is because Focus Features is tied into this a little bit, and they have a little bit more of that track record than Blumhouse.
Yeah.
And so even thinking of Hamnet last year and them kind of pushing it, if they wanted to make a push for one movie, I don't know what else they have on their docket. This could be the one that I feel like let's put all our money behind Indie already. And they're making a lot of money on, kind of the back end of this. So I would love for them to explore that. But either way, the people are saying this is a great performance. And I think that is what's interesting. And I mean, one of the things I also want to delve into is what less theories, but more even analysis of what this film kind of is tapping into. Because I think it taps into a lot of different things that the internet has been talking about. But for me, is this idea of love versus obsession. And if we don't have a say in the matter, is that is that not a good thing or a bad thing, but what does that even look like and what does that say? I think that idea of agency is really, really important. And I just wanted to see from you and your perspective, what is your idea of just like that delineation that they're making between love and obsession?
Well, I think the first delineation they make is between love and romance. In the beginning car scene, I know we're not going scene by scene, but there's that idea that she's writing and she's like, well, it's this, not that. This is, and so these characters hold wholly different connections when it comes to what a romantic connection is, whether it is love, whether it's romance. And we don't see love depicted here from the get go. There is no love here. This is like I said, a Bear holds some obsessive feelings towards the idea of a version of Nikki he doesn't know. And at least that's the way that I'm seeing the film. That's when I watched the film, like him looking at his phone, staring at it. Like, I think that there is something really brave is the wrong word, but like it puts this like relatable thing of like we've all had crushes and it turns it up to a million. It like
Yeah.
really dials it up. And it's really interesting, this like alter Nikki and the way that this kind of possessed or um enthralled character goes through, because to me it's just mirroring Bear's obsession. That's what
Yeah.
her version of love, quote unquote, is just a kind of mirror of how Bear was with the original Nikki.
Yeah, it's what Bear has built up of his ideal. Like I think there in many romance movies, like you're saying, that difference between love and romance. This is kind of a answer to the cliche romantic films that we've seen in the early 2000s, even previously, in a way that is breaking that down to say that's not reality. Like
Right.
that is not this manic pixie dream girl is not the truth, and I think is kind of a response to that when as we're exploring Nikki's. Yeah, I mean, I like that they said this isn't a possession film in the sense that someone has come and possessed Nikki in that way. It's more of a her breaking down what that ideal is, what
Right.
this ideal of a obsessive but also cowardly guy. Bear to me is a coward in every sense of the word because he is unwilling to kind of follow what love could be in the best way.
Like, have the
And
conversation, my guy. Like, just
yeah,
like have
literally.
the conversation or make the wish about you, right?
Yeah.
Th-
Yeah, he's very selfish and wants to build something for himself. He doesn't care about Nikki in the real sense of what love is.
There is, in my work as a therapist, I do this thing called EMDR. And often what we're dealing with is like core beliefs. and working with core beliefs. And so often, the first thing that people do is core beliefs about the world or the external. Like, I want people to like me. I want blank outside of them. And oftentimes, what I have to do is talk through about like, can we make these positive or negative core beliefs I statements about you, your experience, what you're going through, and what you have agency on. Because the first get go is that Bear doesn't feel like he has any agency, even though he's the only one taking away his agency, and then he takes away someone else's. And I do find it right. Like there have been like people on the internet being like, well, people are like reading way too much into it, or like it's so surface level. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe it's rudimentary. Both of the films we're talking about today are like dealing with rudimentary ideas, but in a way that they're packaged that allows us to unpack it and explore it that I think is thematically rich.
Yeah. And I like this idea too of the way that it explores it is in horror, but also in some comedy. I I think that this is what it has been difficult about the film because I have seen the remarks of people laughing, obviously, in maybe places they shouldn't. But also, I remember watching Obsession and having kind of this like laughing uneasily
Yeah.
of what I'm watching. like this is a crazy scenario that we're watching it unfold. Like I think like you said, at the bare minimum of this film is just
Bare minimum.
watching yeah, thank you. Uh it's just watching this wish that Bear has made completely unfold. And that's what it is. And it's kind of comedic as well as terrifying to see it all unfold.
Yeah, I think there is because of the subject matter and because how people have like really read into the subject matter, they're like, "Whoa, don't laugh at this." But Curry Barker is a comedian first and foremost, and there's a lot of humor meant in the film, not just as like shock value, but as something deeper than that. Right? It is part of the text of the film, and I think it's kind of silly for us to ignore that text.
And when you think about this movie, what are the immediate comps that you have to Obsession? Obviously, I have one for Hereditary, kind of Tony Collette being something that Nikki kind of has been modeled after, and also just the way that they're speaking about the film, having, Curry Barker having inspiration with Hereditary in particular. But what other comparisons are you seeing with Obsession here?
So thinking about Indy Navarrete's performance, Indy talked about Pearl and that performance and that kind of like I want to be a star. Obviously, when we think about like the idea of autonomy being taken away in horror, we do have that in Get Out as well. But the first movie I think about is Possession and her performance in Possession, which I think is one of the greatest performances of all time, and how very similar the Nikki is versus the lead in Possession. Which it's a high compliment for. I would not say that Obsession reaches the heights of Possession, but I do think there are like elements in there. Outside of Hereditary, is there anything else that comes up for you?
No, yeah, you had mentioned Get Out, which was something I saw modeled after, but also Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse, which would also be a comparison for the movie we'll talk about later. But just in the way that it creates atmosphere, you sit in the unease, but also some of the movements that you see from the characters kind of are reminiscent of his movie.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if people sat down over a weekend and watched all of those films, I think they'd be having a really great time. I wanted to check in with our letterbox predictions that we made for
Okay.
Obsession. Obsession, which when we did this letterbox predictions a few episodes ago, I think one or two episodes ago, it was at it was at a 4. It was at a 4.0, and it currently is at a 4.1. Both of us guessed that it would go down to a 3.9 when general audiences were going to see it. We were wrong here. I think we might be. We'll go through some other ones as well, but yeah, we were both wrong about that. And then box office wise, this thing is at a worldwide 175 sorry, I had $171 million so far. How are you feeling about our wrongness on Letterboxd, and what do you think about the box office results so far?
I don't feel bad about my wrongness because going into it, it's hard to predict what this movie has done.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies that has blown every measurable
Crazy.
statistic that you can have. Like, I don't think anyone predicted it. So Letterbox wise, not upset by it. Also, box office. I will always be excited when the box office is popping off. People are going to the movie theater, even though theater etiquette might be at an all-time low. At least people are going to the movies. Maybe that will get better, but yeah, I'm just happy that people are seeing this film.
Yeah, they're seeing this film, and the film that they're seeing even more than this film is A24's now biggest box office opening weekend ever by a now 20-year-old, about to be 21, was 19 when he directed, Kane Parsons' Backrooms. I think it might be time to talk about the liminal space in the room. Backrooms, it's a film that is really hard to describe plot-wise because there's not necessarily a lot of plot there, but it basically follows in the 90s, a kind of store clerk runner who has some trauma, is working through that trauma with his therapist. He has a lot of resentment, and he finds in his office a space, a liminal space called what we might call the back rooms, just layers and layers. In fact, 30,000 practical set size layers of rooms that look kind of like our rooms in our real world, but are just a little bit off. They look like a little bit off. And the film just explores those rooms in some ways and explores these two characters, their different relationships to the back rooms or their different relationships to their trauma. And this film is based off of two things. It's based off of a long time kind of Reddit and a kind of 4chan series of photos that are these liminal spaces that kind of like eerily remind us of the 90s and the stories that have been connected to those photos. So it first started off with like one photo that got a little blurb that was kind of haunting, and then people just ran with it. And one of the people that ran with it is now 20-year-old Kane Parsons, who on his YouTube channel for years made a series of dozens of videos exploring a company called A6 and his version of the backrooms, because everyone's different version is different. This isn't like those colorful photos. These are these yellow, tingy backrooms that are his. And that's the basic premise. Like, there's not a lot of like, again, there's not like a deep plot that I'm going to go moment by moment. But again, it's another one that's been taken by storm on TikTok. What are you thinking about the backrooms, Derek?
Rooms, to me, I thought was going to be more of a horror film in a sense, atmospheric horror, but this is more of a psychological horror thriller. And not to say, I know I sounded kind of on a negative. I enjoyed this film. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd myself. I think the idea of exploring liminal spaces and having this kind of uncanny feeling as you're exploring them, that's what it is. Like, this also, similar to Obsession, creates a level of atmosphere through the way it explores the rooms, explores Chitwell Ejiofor, who's a store clerk owner, as Clark, and then you also have Renata Reinsva, who's the therapist as well, and we get to explore her mind, her world, through these back rooms. And I think it does it really well. It does it really effectively. I think it is one of those films that you want to go see once again on opening day to kind of form your own analysis and review on what does the back rooms actually mean, or how did they actually explore Captain Clark and his world. And I think you are thrown into this world in a really cool way. I really love the practical effects and the sets that they use on this. If we're talking about form and we're talking about the way it's constructed, I think you can tell that this was not CGI. This was actual, like, we're putting real people in real spaces. And I think the way they crafted each one of those spaces has its own kind of eeriness to it.
I'm going to say this now. I know on the internet, there's been a lot of discussion on, did Kane Parsons, this 20-year-old man, direct the backrooms? And clip it here. Yes. Yeah. I mean, this came from the mind of a 20-year-old director. And I said that on Threads. And people lost their minds. They're like, "Why are you jealous of this 20-year-old? Why are you being and my initial thing is like, why are we saying that something feeling like it came from the mind of a 20-year-old is a bad thing? Because I think both of these films, you said it about Obsession, I'll say it here, feel like they are made they feel wholly Gen Z. They feel of the internet in two different ways, right? This one feels like it's made by someone from the culture of the Backrooms Reddit pages because it does seem to understand it. Films like this are some of my favorites because I don't want all the information. I want to be able to lay my own thoughts onto something. So I love that there are so many unanswerable questions or unanswered questions. In fact, my least favorite moment of the film are when they maybe touch upon the answers near the end of the film. It feels like the closest thing to like maybe a producer's note on the film. But as you were highlighting, it's the practical of this that makes me most excited for Kane Parsons' next steps. It's the camera and his eye and the way he's able to carry the space. And I do wish at times it moved away from Chiwetel Ejiofor and Renata Reinsva and their characters and spent more time just in the spaces themselves because the reason why I have this as highly rated as I do is that when we're in those spaces, like when we have the little twink in the end apartheid shirt being dragged into the hallway, like I felt, especially on a second watch, I felt Derrick. And like
Yeah.
movies don't always make people feel. And this one made me feel dread. It didn't make me feel scared because that's not what the backrooms make me feel. The concept of the backrooms is kind of dreadful. It is stress inducing. It is anxiety filled. And I do think that this film successfully made that happen, whether it is through the use of space or even the giant Captain Clark or the one jump scare of the kind of plow coming through. Those things were effective, and then this film also does what I love about a film is it made me think afterwards. It made
Yeah.
me lay in bed after the movie and think about the themes that it's trying to explore. Again, like I said, rudimentary therapy speak on this film, right? This is a rudimentary take on
Yeah, I was gonna
trauma.
say, what if you had 1 to 5 on therapy? What would it?
I
Where would it
mean,
land?
and that's the tired thing about this is it's another therapy kind of like horror film. We've had so many therapy horror films. Like I honestly think since Get Out, every director's been like, oh, we can take trauma and put it as a horror film. Here's Malignant. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think it was done really well the first time, and it's been tired. But this was done a little bit differently. I feel like, and I do really love that we get to see two different reactions to the back, right? In my theory here, the way that I see it, we see Clark, this person that has wronged other people, this person who is stuck in these loops, who sees the backrooms as a type of escape, who sees the backrooms as a thing to explore and discover, and has a level of like autonomy in the backrooms of like choosing to go in there, choosing to use his coworkers as bait almost. And it's very much a, kind of similar to Bear in the sense of, having autonomy and maybe taking other people's away to be the hero of your own story. So that's his exploration of the backrooms. And then her exploration of the backrooms, number one, she's doing a wellness check in some ways. Although in general, for my wellness checks, I'm not going to go to someone's work. I won't, but
Right.
she does. She goes to someone's work, and then when she's in the back rooms, for her, the back rooms are something she wants to leave because she's been there in her own way. Whether you believe the theories that like there was a tunnel to the back rooms in her own house or what have you, for me, it's just that her childhood reminds her of the back rooms. That the spaces with her agoraphobic mother remind her of that, and she wants to escape again. And so, like, she is breaking the cycle by using that fist and knocking it down. And so, yeah, I mean, this is me laying my own experience or my own thoughts onto the film in a way that I know Derek annoyed you for Obsession,
No, no,
but
no, no.
I really liked thinking about that stuff. And then I loved turning on TikTok and then seeing like my friend JDX or my friend Stone like having completely different takes than me when it comes to the character of Mary or the character of Clark, and none of us being wrong because Kane Parsons isn't the type of director, isn't Sean Levy going to come out and be like, well, this is exactly what I meant and this is what it means. He's allowing the audience to really place their experiences or their thoughts onto the film itself.
Yeah. I mean, to defend myself, but also to defend kind of everyone with this movie, I think the reason I got tired of this was less people analyzing it, but almost that being the first means that people experience this film. I
Mm,
wanted people just to experience
to feel.
the
Yeah.
movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
just to feel. I mean, I was reading, I don't know if you're familiar with Susan Sontag and her work, but just a great kind of art critic. And I was just reading her kind of treatise on interpretation of art
Yeah.
and just talking about there needs to be more eroticism in art, which just means I just want people to feel movies. I want people to have their own thoughts as opposed to like, now I have to come up with a theory or this great analysis to either enjoy it or not. Not to say not to analyze it. We need more of that, especially in the media literacy crisis. I want people to analyze, but first I want people to feel. So first and foremost, defending myself there, but also I think that's what Backrooms and also Obsession are doing, is making people feel first. I do think there's a level of, not saying everyone's not doing it. I just was like, these are two movies, especially that are better when you just experience them first. Backrooms, especially letting you sit in these liminal spaces. Because I think for my interpretation on these liminal spaces is they're kind of this extension of the feelings that we're getting from both of these characters, especially loneliness and isolation, and how those are just echoed out into these back rooms. There's a reason why it feels kind of familiar, but also something that is eerie. Like loneliness and depression are kind of something that is like, I can grasp onto and I can kind of get these feelings. And for both Mary and Clark, they are both in those spaces. Like the film is kind of showing you that these are two isolated and depressed individuals. And the backrooms for them is them exploring them. One that wants to maybe do it in a maybe cowardly way, not to get into spoilers, but one of the exposition pieces is Mary confronting Clark and saying, "You run away from everything. And you use other people as scapegoats, and because of your cowardly actions, it hurts people." And he is one of the few people that actually creates damage in this film as Clark. And then Mary kind of runs away from herself. And I think the Backrooms, in a way, is echoing these kind of psychological aspects. And I just wanted people to be like, man, just feel that, feel that even maybe with your own emotions. That's what the Backrooms are doing, is highlighting these uncanny feelings and echoing them out for us to almost explore our own feelings in that way.
Yeah, I think a issue with the feelings first for Backrooms for a lot of the audience is the expectations that they're bringing in. And, I always talk about how expectations are the enemy of enjoyment, especially for things that you hold dear or you have knowledge on. And a lot of audience members, especially younger audience members, they have their own version of the Backrooms. They have their own mythology around the Backrooms. And so when we see them put on screen, you and I can go and be like, I'm going to feel. I'm feeling because I'm just seeing this one person's vision of their movie. And we're not bringing in either our expectations on the Backrooms or our expectations from the trailer or the type of screams. We also, because we go to the theater as much as we do, we're not like, well, this isn't Obsession, so it's not as good, because we realize that it's trying to accomplish something different. But I do think that a lot of people are going in analysis first. So I'm going to be on Team Derrick defense as well. A lot of people are going in being like, well, what is A6 doing? And why aren't they exploring? And then there's the pacing part of the movie that I think some people are rubbing up against, and I think really works. These idea that we have these large gaps of time. Well, number one, that time works differently in the Backrooms, which is never spelled out, but is something that I can definitely just feel. And that we have these large gaps of time between the moments that we see Clark during his exploration. Like, he drew a whole map. That takes time to explore. And maybe on a TV show, it would have been really cool to explore him doing that. But as I said on another podcast, we got that on Severance. We got someone taking a map and exploring their version of the Backrooms. There, we don't need to see that here. We can just see those slow slips of deterioration of his psyche, or what I might say is him not slipping in the psyche, him maybe finding his true self, him discovering the authentic version of Clark that he lets himself be. I like that we don't have everything spelled out. I will say that
Yeah.
time and time again, whether we have like the still lives. I didn't know they were called still lives until I was on Google afterwards and being like, "Oh, that's the difference between these cloudy, couch-filled people versus the big Clark kind of like entity, and how the entity and the still lives are different." Or even the ending, which some people are like, "Well, isn't actually real. It's all in her head." I'm like, well, I understand that interpretation, but also that's not how still lives work. So that Mary at the end is a still life Mary. It's the backrooms remembering her. And I love that image of the going down and down. And that's the
Yeah.
backrooms really connecting to her. That's not her being stuck. Now, mind you, I do think if we're talking plot, Mary's fucked when it comes to like A6 is not letting her out.
Yeah.
She is an evil corporation has her. Like this is not Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They are not going to let her go off with the aliens at the end. Spoiler for Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I suppose. But I do think because of the open-endedness of it and because it's a lore that like we don't necessarily know as much, different people are going to walk away being like, well, all of that was in her head. After Captain Clark got her, she's just stuck. But that's not necessarily like in the text of the film. That's people doing what
Yeah.
you were talking about earlier of them just like bringing in and dealing with what they have in front of them.
Yeah. And to a degree, this is an adaptation.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Kane Parsons' adaptation on the Backrooms. And I think this is maybe a bigger conversation talking about how people are reacting to adaptations in general.
Sure.
I mean, the Odyssey comes to mind, where Christopher Nolan is trying to adapt his own work of the Odyssey into, the Greek text in his casting and the world that he's bringing and the costume design. It's Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey. Obviously, it's not a one for one, but I think seeing people's reaction to that and also seeing people's reaction to maybe the Backrooms of, I have all this information of like, I know the lore of the 4chan, rabbit hole that I've went on, or Kane Parsons' even vision when he was doing his YouTube series, or maybe other people who have done the Backrooms, they meet up with their expectation of what this adaptation is and they get let down. Time and time again, because there's no curiosity for them when they see an adaptation like this. Instead of saying, wow, this is someone's stamp on what they believe this world or these characters could actually be, they get disappointed because they're like, no, I just want to see maybe what I've already seen, which to a degree, I can see where you're coming from, but I think they miss out once again with the experience of it and also the artistic expression to come in with something almost new to say. Because I think that's what is the beautiful thing of an adaptation is I want someone to say something new about this work that I've already seen, or I could go watch the other work before. I could go watch the Backrooms YouTube series. I could go read the Odyssey, but since I haven't touched since like maybe high school and try to get through it, But the reason why film is so important and cool is you're getting to see it in a fresh way. And I think that is what the Backrooms does.
Yeah. I think what you're talking about a little bit is ownership. Right? There is a sense of ownership that people get over their IP or quote unquote their IP. And, we see it in the worst of ways in a franchise that's not beloved to you with Star Wars and people's reactions to The Last Jedi and like the idea of you're not playing with the toys, right? Or we see it in a way of like ownership of like people not necessarily knowing what to do with the IP with Masters of the Universe and the almost embarrassment it sounds like they have with their own lore, their own IP. Uh, I really love the connection you're making between the Backrooms and Odyssey, although I do think the Odyssey is even more wrapped up with racism and bigotry than
Yeah, for sure.
anything anything that the Backrooms is happening. But there still is a lot of, well, this isn't my version of the Backrooms. Why are we following this 40-year-old man? Right? Like I one of my first videos after I saw Backrooms was about the strange choice of focusing on a late 30-year-old therapist and a 40-year-old client, and how I think he did that because those two people can represent trauma the most. But 20-year-olds can experience trauma too, right? Like we could have
100%.
had kind of like audience stand-in characters that were closer to the general audience's age. So it was a really interesting choice, and I don't know whose choice it was, right? This was not Kane Parsons's screenplay, which brings me to some qualms I have with the film.
Yeah.
Right, I think we've been pretty complimentary up until now. I do feel like the film itself, its screenplay is the weakest part. Craft-wise, this thing is amazing, but the screenplay feels very underbaked a little bit for me, and I think if they would have moved away from the need for any type of plot, that would have excited me. Maybe not excited the rest of the world, but that would have excited me if it was more just about the space or just someone else's words. Like I think it's telling that Kane Parsons, when he's thinking about the sequel, has been saying, "I'm looking for creatives to work with. I'm looking
Yeah.
for a writer," because I think he too felt maybe the most weighed down by those elements of the film.
Yeah, it doesn't give the the space, I think, that they've crafted. The screenplay, like you said, I think is the weakest part. And I think the writing doesn't lend itself to the actual spaces that were created and crafted. I think you said it best. I wanted to just stay in the spaces, and when they did, that was the best part of the movie to me. And then when we're trying to maybe delve into way too expositionally, especially in the third act of we got to explain kind of everything that we're exploring, is where it loses us as an audience member. And you kind of are like, you almost scratch your head more because you were maybe interested in the eerie atmosphere that they're creating. And then when we're starting to explain everything, you're like, okay, now I actually I have to reckon with what you just said. And either I like that or I didn't like it. And I maybe would have loved to sit in I don't know what you're actually trying to tell me. I don't actually want to know what you're actually trying to tell me. I just want to maybe experience this movie, and I want to linger with what maybe their motivations might be, and just let them do the thing, as opposed to like, well, let me tell you why I did it. And it's like, oh no, this feels like a Scooby Doo villain reveal of like, this is why I did everything that I did. And it's like, just did not need those unnecessary motivations.
Yeah, it spells things out. All 3 of
Yeah,
the lead talking characters have moments of spelling things out in a way that they don't need to. Whether it is Clark down there and why he's down there, or, Mary being like, "This is all your fault," and, like, finally telling her client off, or Mark Duplass's character at the end. And the Mark Duplass character at the end, I kind of like that they almost pastiche it. They almost like make fun of Lord Dumps where they like touch upon it, but like he has more questions than answers. But still, I think this film would have been equally as successful or more so successful if it moved away from A6 completely. If
yeah,
this is a film that didn't have the backlore of Kane Parsons' Backrooms like series with the A6 and the MRI machines and those people in the yellow suits. I love the intro scene, right? That was so powerful. And again, I think that we haven't said this yet, but the found footage stuff is the coolest part, at least for me, one of the coolest parts of the film. But then in the third act, when they bring the Mac, I just feel like it speed runs through things and it weighs the piece down in a way where the final 5 seconds, the final minute maybe, where they finally cut to Mary, they go through the layers of the back rooms and it cuts to her still life self. All of those are powerful, but then it just like ends. It
yeah.
just cuts out and I'm left with more questions, not about the world, but about the screenplay. And that's when maybe I mean, there's a reason why I think Obsession lingers with me more than Backrooms when it comes to the screenplays, because I think Obsession feels like a fully formed screenplay and Backrooms feels like a fully formed, maybe cinematography film, but the screenplay itself just like doesn't
Just leaves
work.
you a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying Obsession is better than Backrooms. You heard it here first. Y'all, Daniel Film Therapy loves Obsession, hates Backrooms.
That's right. I mean, looking before we get to like the which one is better,
Yeah.
any final thoughts before I go through the letterbox and box office of our friend the Backrooms?
Yeah, no, I think we've covered kind of our likes and, maybe dislikes. And part of maybe my dislikes was the underutilization of Mary's character, Renata Reinsva's character. I think I would have, if incorporating her into the story. Oh.
So go
What?
on.
You have
Go on.
something to
Speak about
say?
Renata Reinsve. You want to speak on Renata Reinsve, Derek? Go for
No,
it.
no, no, no. Yeah. I think she just was underutilized, in my opinion, from what the writing or what we could have done if we're delving into the psychological aspects of these characters. I would have maybe wanted either more or I honestly would have wanted less of even her lore of
Sure.
her as a therapist, if we're not going to actually fully flesh it out. And not, once again, not in flesh out doesn't mean I need it spelled out, but more of just explore more of who she is. I mean, I think that kind of left me wanting more.
Now, I would hate to like bring, text messages, air dirty laundry on the pod, but like when you saw Backrooms, you sent one text to the group chat that we have with film content creators, Lewis Likes Movie and Raggle Fraggle, where you said that maybe Joachim Trier was not your issue with sentimental value or worst person in the world. So now you're saying you wanted more use of Renata Reinsve and Mary, but like when you sent that text message, I just want to like give you a chance, because I'm very kind. I want to give you a chance to just air your grievances or thoughts on the performance here.
Renata's dope. Like the biggest reason I actually said that was because I feel like anytime she is in a movie, and I've only seen, I believe this is my third one with her in, I haven't seen anything else with her in it. I don't love the movies that she's in. So it's less of, I was making the kind of comparison of like, man, I was hoping maybe I would leave and say, this is a really great film, top 10. And I was like, I have some really great likes and also some dislikes. And that's how I feel about Sentimental Value and The Worst Person in the World, where I'm like, I'm finding out why I have such a hard time connecting with Joachim Trier's work, but I also think maybe Renata Reinsve. So that's why I was texting it out so I could do the work to maybe dive into her filmography, because I do think she's a great actress, but I think we also have those actresses and actors in general that just you fail to connect with. And I think maybe she is that actor for me. So not to say she's bad, just to say the projects that she's in, I failed to connect. But if I ever saw her in person, I would never say she's bad. I would be totally two-faced and say, I think you're incredible. Or because I do think she is.
Put that on the poster. Yeah. She totally two-faced. I think you're incredible. Now, I will take 2 wins from here. Number 1, you have said that the Queen Renata Reinsve is incredible. I will do that. And also, when discussing her other films, you said there are things that I really like about these movies. And so I am going to just, because like I can't have the win that you will love this movie, but I will hold on to whatever things that you can say nicely about Joachim Trier's work, and I will just like hold it close to my heart. And you don't have to counterbalance. You don't have to take it away, because it sounded genuine in the moment. And so for me, I'm putting this in camp. Derrick doesn't hate me, because if Derrick hates Sentimental Value, Derrick hates me. I'm just putting that in here, and I'm just gonna hold it, because I did rewatch Sentimental Value on my way back.
I could never, but I'm happy for you. I'm happy that was your experience.
It was. And the funny thing about Renata Reinsve and her career is that this film, Backrooms, has made more money worldwide than all of her other films combined. Like, this is the movie that people are meeting her with. I think that her last film made her Sentimental Value made like 20 million worldwide. I think Worst Person in the World made like 6 million worldwide. And so this is how people are being introduced to Renata Reinsve. And I don't think it's her best performance, but I'm just glad people are, especially with Fjord coming around the corner.
This is her year. And I'm not going to hate that for anybody. Especially me. I'm not her. I think people will really fall in love with her work. And especially, I hope more people do watch The Worst Person in the World and Sentimental Value, because you love those films.
Wow.
And you have great taste in movies.
Wow, Derrick.
So if you like it, someone
else is gonna like it. I like that for you. Everyone else, someone has their Masters of the Universe somewhere.
Somebody does.
So speaking of the box office right now, we're entering the second weekend for Backrooms. I do not think its second weekend is going to be as big as the first because of backlash, because of word of mouth. A lot of people are saying good things, but a lot of people are definitely not. If you scroll through TikTok here, you'll see a lot of people calling this the worst movie they've ever seen, which I think Derek and I would say, go watch more movies. But the domestic right now, we're at 107 and the worldwide is 146 million worldwide, which is insane for an A24 film.
Yeah, I mean, you said this is the biggest A20. Is it the biggest at this point?
It is, well, it's the biggest opening weekend. I don't think it's the highest earning overall, but I think it is heading that way.
That way. All right. Well, I do hope it makes money so that A24 can put out some more great projects.
I mean, this is their version of a franchise film. They're going to make it again and again and again forever. So that is what we're not necessarily stuck with, but that's what's coming our way. Now, the other thing worth mentioning is our letterboxed bets here. Our letterboxed bets, when at the time that we did our bets, there was like nothing to work off of other than the original Backrooms found footage film, which was at a 3.8. Derek, you guessed a 3.5 overall Backrooms kind of final box office. Now, mind you, we'll do this all at the end of the summer as well because things might change. You guessed a 3.5. I guessed a 3.7. I thought people were going to be a little bit more bullish on this. And right now, because the last one we were both off by the same amount, you're winning this game, at least for these two films, because you guessed a 3.5. So you're one off. You still get a point here. And
so it's 3.4 is the rating on Letterboxd?
Yeah, currently it's 3.4 on Letterboxd.
Right.
Yeah. And I think you gave it a 3.5. I gave it a 4. Overall, I could see this dipping again as more people see it. It is about to hit 1 million logs on Letterboxd. Obsession already did. It's about to very soon.
These are the movies for the year. These are the ones that people will be, I think, talking about for a minute. I think maybe Obsession has longer legs when it comes to, like you said, conversations and staying power. But if they're going to make another Backroom, so we'll be talking about it again.
Yeah. And these are, I mean, we've had some amazing directorial debuts. These are not my favorite directorial debuts of the year. Feature film directorial debut, for me at least, is either Blue Heron or If I Go, Will They Miss Me? I think those two films are miraculous. But a lot of times directorial debut is not something you want to go back and watch. Like watching Park Chan-wook's directorial debut doesn't make me happy. Watching Yorgos Lanthimos' directorial debut, it does. But there are certain directors who, when you go back and look at their filmography, I mean, they've had the juice from the beginning. And so we wanted to take a chance just to highlight a few, maybe go back and forth with our top 5-ish directorial debuts. Really hard, at least for me, to narrow down to these top 5. But yeah, any thoughts basically on directorial debuts in general before you list your number 5 here, Derek?
I think just to say that when you actually look back on people's first narrative feature, it is astounding to know that it's just hard to be like, yeah, this is my first feature film.
It's hard to make a movie.
It's hard to make a movie and also make a good one on your first time doing it or directing it that way. So when we were creating, I was looking through the list. I was like, oh, I was looking through Park Chan-wook and it was like, yeah, that's not it. Or, some also have some weirder delineations of like Spielberg with, is it a TV film versus a narrative feature film? Like you kind of get some interesting ideas there. But I think first and foremost, it's hard to make a film. It's hard to make a first film. It's hard to stay in the industry and continue to make films. So shout out to anyone who is making films. If you listen to the podcast, that you don't have to be these people who will create knockout films. I think we can celebrate the people that have, but also just the idea of making a film in general.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we're getting more and more films from people. So yeah, excited to dive into this, see what I feel like I might know 1 or 2 that are maybe on your list of 5, and maybe you could guess a couple of mine, but I'm excited to do this exercise of our top 5 directorial debuts.
Yeah, I have an idea of what your number 1 will be. I just have a bet that we've talked about it on this podcast many times before. And there are so many people that have made lists. So before we kind of talk through it, I do want to shout out Seth Reviews, one of our mutuals, has a wonderful list of his top 60 directorial debuts. And there's so many other lovely creatives that have made like the best directorial debut lists of all time. I thought we could trade back and forth on one after the other, maybe say some nice words or maybe mean words. Maybe we'll be like, well, that's not a good one to go through. Do you want me to start or you?
You know what? I want you to start. You know, as
Yeah.
as a fan of Renata Reinsva, I have no idea why I'm bringing her back up, but I think this will be
A good place for me to
I
start.
just want you to go. Yeah.
I'll go. I went back in time for my fifth favorite directorial debut. I There were a lot of options here, but for me, Charles Laughton's final film and first film, The Night of the Hunter, I think is one of the most impressive directorial debuts I've ever seen. The cinematography, the way the script is written, being able to get that performance out of that actor, I just think is so impressive. And the film itself, part of the reason why I'm starting here, also because it's Pride Month, like Charles Laughton being a queer director, making a film that is subtextually queer in nature, it, I just think it's a really, really impressive place to start that so many films have taken inspiration from since. Is this on your list?
It wasn't on my list, but it was something I knew you were going to put on your list.
Okay.
I was like, I had it definitely in my honorable mentions of something, if you didn't have it, to definitely talk about. And I think if you're listening to this, don't be discouraged like Charles Laughton.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reason he didn't make any more films, is just the reception that Night of the Hunter got. And he just, I don't know, unless there was some blacklisting. From what I was reading, it was mostly just
He still
didn't
worked.
perform well, and he worked and just didn't direct anything. Maybe got discouraged from that. So don't be discouraged. We're looking back on the legacy years after that film and saying it was really good, except those kids. Those kids were annoying. But other than that, the film was good.
You heard it here. Derrick says, "Fuck them kids, get them out of here."
No, truly, I genuinely, that was like the one thing that I wrote on my review was, this is one of the best films ever, but those kids, man, were so annoying.
Yeah. Where are you going for your fifth?
For my number 5, I'm also going back in time. I'm going to Africa, to the father of Africa. I'm going with Osman Sembeni's Black Girl. It's about 60 minutes, kind of anti-colonial film, a landmark film for African cinema. This film is so important historically, and like I said, Osman Sembeni is the father of African cinema in many ways, just trailblazing the way for more African directors, films from Africa to be seen and to be recognized on the global scale. So, and also just how radical this film is and what it's actually saying. It's not holding back any punches. I think it's just a very, very important film. So I had to put it on my list here at number 5. Was this something that you thought I might?
No, I mean, this is not
here?
a film I've seen. So I don't know much about it. I've heard such good things. I do believe it's on Letterboxd's top 500 films of all time. But yeah, this was not one I anticipated to be on the list. But I love it being here because looking at my list, it's a little Western. So I do love that we are getting a little bit more world cinema on the list, and it's high on my radar for movies to check out.
So what you got? What you got at number 4?
Okay, I'm continuing the Western, continuing with young directors. This is a director who is, when he directed his first film, was between the age of Kane Parsons and Curry Barker, and that is John Singleton's Boys in the Hood. This is a near perfect film. Wonderful performances, has so much to say. I oftentimes compare it to Lahane, both thematically, what it has to say about young men, and even some visuals are slightly similar, although one is, black and white and one is not. But this movie, I just think, is so powerful. Also, getting a box set, I believe, from Criterion. But yeah, I think about this film a lot. I also think about the fact that John Singleton made this as initially started as a school project, and is like 23 years old. Crazy stuff. Is this Anywhere on your list?
It's not on my list, but I'm so glad you brought this up. I mean, truly, when I like that this list has some like landmark films.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking about '90s cinema, also the age of when John Singleton was, and the recognition he got for this film, I think was really cool to see in the '90s for a young black director. That was something that just had not happened in the past. So, literally, the youngest person and first African American director to be nominated for Best Director at the Oscars, I think, is really, really important. So, shout out to them. The movie is just solid and will live on forever.
100%. Where are you going next?
All right, for number 4 is, I mean, it's the man himself, Michael Mann, with Thief.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite films of all time. And just from James Caan's performance to Tangerine Dreams' score, I think he was working with a lot of really great tools. I think similar to maybe a Kane Parsons, he had maybe better tools in his arsenal to create and craft a film as opposed to maybe like an indie film like Obsession and kind of working with what you got. He still worked with what he got, and what he got was pretty good. So Thief definitely is one of my favorite films, and I had to add it on my list.
Yeah, this is a movie that the last time I saw it with you, and I stayed awake. I really love this film. This is, I think, my third favorite film for Michael Mann. For a lot of people, it's their first favorite film. It has so much of his DNA. Like, there are some directors where you watch their directorial debut and you think, oh, you're still finding yourself. You're still finding who you are. This one, the way he shoots the roads, the way that it's scored, the way the lights shine on the cars' hoods, it's just so Michael Mann. And you're right, the lead performance and the isolation of it. I think you can track almost every single one of his other great films to Thief in such a cool way. And so I didn't have it on my list. This is like I want to go through. I know we're doing 5, and I kind of want to do honorable mentions, but this was definitely an honorable mention for me.
What do you have at number 3? I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited, but also I don't want to give you fuel for a future project we're doing. Yeah. So I do have to say this because I have to be true to myself, but I do think that in 2017 we got one of the best directorial debuts I've ever seen. This is Jordan Peele's Get Out, is one of my only 5 out of 5 directorial debuts. He took all of his history as a sketch comedian, all of his history as a creative, and made a perfect film. This is, I think, technically amazing. I mean, we've talked since we started as kind of talking about the Oscars. We've talked a little bit about the history of black directors being kind of relegated to writing awards, and this guy won best original screenplay here. It is one of the films that should have won the year it was nominated for Best Picture, and I just love this film. Is this anywhere close to your list here?
It's not on my list, but it was on my list, and I was like, I could talk about this movie for way too long.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for a future project, Get Out is definitely one of the best. I have it on one of my favorite movies of the 21st century. I think is well crafted, great horror film, subversive, has social commentary. It does everything we think modern horror or elevated horror, to use maybe a term people don't like. It does all those well, and I think we could trace the lineage of so much of what horror does to movies like Get Out and even Hereditary. So big shout out to you putting Get Out on this list, because Jordan Peele is just cooking, and I need him back in the director's chair. I know he's producing and doing other things, but when he gets back, I'm excited for what he's going to do next.
Yeah, he could be him, but he's not him right now.
Yes, true. All right. I'm going to slap my knee and move on to my third pick, which is Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue. I don't know if that's on your list anywhere based on your reaction.
It is on my list. It is on my list. But let's hear you talk about it first.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, first of all, I think that I'm always shocked that this is his first project just because of how perfect this film is. I wrote in my last review of me watching this movie, if there was a movie you show to aliens, I think Perfect Blue would be kind of the best one. This is a great exploration of psychological deterioration. I mean, the mind playing. I mean, you have better language to it probably as a therapist, but I think for me, even watching it as a layman, of what this movie does and just the animation and how it all comes together. Once again, for a first film, it does all those elements really, really well.
No, I think his best film, Satoshi Kon's best film, and I think it is such an amazing creation. Just the artistry behind it, the psychology that it's exploring, the films that it inspired, right? Like without this, we wouldn't have, Black Swan. We wouldn't have some parts of Inception. Like there are so many things that Satoshi Kon inspired here. And yes, he had worked in TV before, but it's perfect. It's perfect and it's moving. It's heartbreaking. It's one of the best films of all time. And it would be I thought it was like his final film or something like that, but it's the way he started his feature film debut. And we only got 4 films from him, but this one, yeah, I mean, this is my number 2, was my number
Okay.
2 here, Perfect Blue. Uh, I think that it is the best depiction of psychosis, of DID, and of obsession that we've ever seen on screen, right? Like you asked earlier, what movie should people watch if they like obsession? Watch Perfect Blue. Watch Perfect
Yeah.
Blue, and you will have your mind blown. And yeah, there's nothing much like there are some movies that are so perfect that there's not a lot to say, and this is one of those where I'm like, just go watch it. Just go watch it and enjoy and be moved. And I have the Blu-ray. I can't wait to get the 4K. Got to see it on the big screen when it was playing at Regal. Amazing. And so I recommend seeing this on the biggest screen possible if you can.
I'm glad there's some overlap in our lists. And for my number 2, I have Charles Burnett's Killer of Sheep, his kind of thesis film, coming out of UCLA. The reason I wanted to put this film on here is because of this is one of those movies that I'm glad is getting a resurgence in the film canon of what people believe as being some of the most important American works. I'm loving after kind of its restoration that people are going back and saying, wow, this is really, really important. A great working class film, a great film that has a lot to say.
Mhm.
And I watched this actually for the first time last year during Bleak Week. So I was like thinking about bleak movies and I was like, oh yeah, Killer of Sheep was a movie that is so bleak, but so good. And I want more people to check it out. And so Charles Burnett's Killer of Sheep, I believe you have seen this movie.
I have, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
This was one of the 2 films that I had a feeling you were gonna have on your list here. Uh, did see this one. If you love this one, please, please go see If I Go, Will They Miss Me? There is thematic connection. There are actually shot by shot comparisons to some of the shots in If I Go, Will They Miss Me, paying homage. And I almost mentioned Killer of Sheep when I was talking about John Singleton's directorial debut because both of these films are films made out of college from people working in not a studio system, but a film system. And, I don't think John Singleton would have been able to do what he did without the LA Rebellion, without that movement, even though the films are very different. Killer of Sheep is I haven't seen it on the big screen, but it is so powerful. I have it in the Criterion shelf right behind me,
Right
and
behind you.
I think it's a really special film, and I'm glad you're shouting it out here.
Well, I'm excited. What is number 1
I mean, I think we
on
should
your
say it at the
list?
same time. No, like we should say it at the same time, unless I'm wrong about what your
Yeah,
number 1 is.
you know what my number 1.
Oh,
All right, well, it's your turn though.
yeah. Okay. So my number
Yeah,
1
yeah,
is
yeah.
the directorial debut of one of the best directors of all time, Sidney Lumet. The best directorial debut of all time is 12 Angry Men.
12 Angry
It's
Men.
12 Angry Men. This is what Derrick has
Yeah,
on
it
his
is.
list too.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the best use of blocking that a directorial, like a feature film director has ever done. This is the best script that a feature film director has ever worked with. This one has something that Derrick and I both love, which is thematic relevance to the world, to what's happening in the United States when it's created. Able to get the best performers. That like the fact that he got those actors in his directorial debut is really special. And I mean, Sidney Lumet is one of those directors where like every day I'm like, what is my best favorite film from him? Because he has 4 different 5-star films, I believe,
Yeah.
and from my perspective, but this is nothing's past this one. What about you? What are your thoughts on, I mean, if you wanna, no one's heard
What
you
do
ever talk
I
about this one before.
Yeah, I've never talked about my love. I mean, literally a poster for people that can see it
Yeah.
back here of 12 Angry Men. This is a timeless film.
Yeah.
It will transcend time and has space and people who watch this. I think its relevance to someone who watches it very young to also someone who watches this at an older age. It's really hard to find movies that really land with people at every stage of life from almost all walks of life because of its central themes, and the way that it's shot, the intensity that you feel when you watch this film. I think this is this is a perfect film.
Yeah.
Like I
It's a
really
perfect film.
have not a lot of issues with it, just in how it's crafted and how it's formed. And once again, to think that this is a directorial debut. I mean, him working in television, I'm sure kind of lended itself here, and you can see that play out. But as a narrative feature film and the weapons that Sidney Lumet had to make this film, Henry Fonda being in it, like, yeah, it's one of the best films of all time, and I would recommend this to your grandma, but also to a baby.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm
Well,
like,
I don't know.
if this is the first movie that they're born, they're watching 12 Angry Men. That's what we're putting on.
Well, now I know what you're gonna show your kids. But I'm struck by something, before I ask kind of a question about directorial debuts in general. I'm struck by the different pipelines of directorial debuts, right? Like, we have Curry Barker and Kane Parsons, who their pipeline was YouTube, their pipeline was TikTok, their pipeline is there. And then we had directors like Charles Burnett or John Singleton, their pipeline is university. Now, one of those got recognition from Hollywood, one of those directors really didn't, but they had a like pipeline of like education. And then we have directors like Satoshi Kon, Michael Mann, Sidney Lumet, whose pipeline was TV. And it's really interesting the way that these directors make their way to their feature film. You know, Charles Lawton, he was already an actor, right? Like, he had like connections there. And so we see in a Kane Parsons or a Curry Barker the new pipeline. There's always been pipelines, but we are seeing the new pipeline really fully take form.
Yeah, no, I like that you made that. Even thinking of some of the honorable mentions we might talk about from Nobuhiko Obayashi had a commercial background. He worked in commercials mainly. Jordan Peele, like you mentioned, had a sketch comedy background, TV to a degree, but also just seeing the ways that people come into their own. And you can find that DNA in the movies that you kind of watch from them of like, oh, there's some TV here, or there's some YouTube and influence in there. And I'm excited for this new wave of what YouTubers are going to do with the future. I'm glad that you can right now. I know the directors of the old will be like, just pull out your iPhone and film it and just put it out there. But I think there's something to say of that accessibility for a lot of people to create your first feature film is maybe as easy as it's ever been. It's maybe harder because more people are making more movies. So is the visibility there? But I think the ease in which you can make one and really work on your craft, I think should be more exciting than it is disheartening in many ways.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about other directorial debuts as you were speaking, and we have like a pattern of writers becoming directors, whether it's Charlie Kaufman and Synecdoche, New York, or Alex Garland and Ex Machina, and how like those films feel like their writings come to life. But we also have the pattern of like some directors having to go through a certain system in order to make a film, right? David Fincher's directorial debut, we would not list today. No offense, Alien 3, I'm higher on it than many, but that film it didn't feel like his true voice until the next film. Are there films that you feel like people are going to be mad that we didn't name, that we didn't list?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I could think of was maybe a recent one, Past Lives from Celine Song, being one that I was like, out of the 5, I would love to put her on this list. Ivan's Childhood for Tarkovsky was another one where I was like, one of the greatest directors.
Sure.
Really didn't make a bad film. I think people would be mad at. And then Peter Bogdanovich for Targets was
Sure.
another one that I was like, I'm just thinking of seminal directors that have some staying power. Those are the ones that I was like, man, Someone's going to say something later to us on the podcast, like, how did you list those people? But what did you have on yours?
I mean, my other kind of like 4.5 feature film directorial debuts, After Sun and Little Miss Sunshine, I think are really powerful. We already mentioned it, but Night of the Living Dead, directorial debut, or really powerful. I could see Ratcatcher, people being upset, or Eraserhead. Donnie Darko, there's a large contingent of fans that love that film. And you mentioned Hereditary earlier. I think that is another one that could be mentioned. Nightcrawler is not for me, but I mean, I have it at 4. There's a lot of people that love it, but I think Nightcrawler is an example of similar trajectory to Charles Lawton, where it's like your feature film debut and also maybe your final film, depending on where he goes next. And then the number one of all time that people talk about is Citizen Kane, right? Citizen Kane is crazy that it's a directorial debut and it's one of the biggest movies of all time, and so I'm sure people will be like, hey, what's happening here?
They'll question our cinephileness. They'll be like, are you a true cinephile if you didn't have
Citizen Kane on the list,
there?
Which I'm sorry,
which is maybe the obvious pick.
It's the obvious
great
pick,
movie.
but it's not my favorite of the director, and it's also I don't like. I think it's good. It has a lot of his DNA, but I just was thinking about these directors who are like, oh my God. And like that one doesn't do it for me. That the history of the film, how it's talked about afterwards does, but actually watching the film, I'd rather watch Touch of Evil and have a good night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was actually surprised. The one movie that I was surprised it wasn't on your list was The Maltese Falcon from John Huston.
I did think about it, but it is actually it's not in my top 10 noirs of all time. And I really do like it, but I do find that the pacing of look, John Huston doesn't have to take my notes, but if you want to tighten it up, just like if you want to tighten it up just a little bit, it might work better. I do. I think it's iconic. Like I will list the word iconoclast for that film, that director. But if we look at my noir list real quick, where I have it on the list, scrolling. It's 22. Right, it's 22 on my noir list, and so like I just think that if you have it In a Lonely, like these are not directorial debuts, but if you have Big Heat, In a Lonely Place, Third Man, Double Indemnity, like all of these are going to come into my conversation of holy shit, you need to watch this movie if you love a noir before I mention Maltese Falcon.
Yeah, it's more just iconic than it is one of your favorites.
Right, 100%. Or one of the best, because my list is, the best. Unimpeachable. Unimpeachable.
It's the one you have to go to if you're to see if you actually like noirs and you're not ranking them the way Daniel does. Then do you actually like noirs?
That's the question. I mean, there's the entire list. The Letterboxd actually has an official top 100 noirs of all time. I sent you that list because I was like, maybe we should do this project sometime. I've only seen like half. There are so many noirs I haven't seen yet, so I can't wait to watch that. But yeah, no Houston for me, and I didn't like have bets. The only two I thought you were really gonna say were Killer of Sheep, and I just knew 12 Angry Men was gonna get a message. And then
100%.
because we were talking about like best films of the 2010s, I thought maybe we'd get a Get Out from you, but it does make sense since you'll be able to talk about that one in the future, that maybe you were being a little strategic there.
Yeah, I don't want to put all the cards on the table just yet.
One more though. Sorry Baby does deserve a shout out here. Like there are so many newer ones. Sorry Baby, I think has been a really great directorial debut. And like I said, this year has been a really powerful year for directorial debuts from If I Go Will They Miss Me, Blue Heron. I believe My Father's Shadow's a directorial debut, feature film directorial debut, because Blue Heron's not, there was a documentary first, but Obsession is a directorial debut. Pillion, I believe, is a directorial debut. Like so many great
Is God Is
directorial debut, really
Mm-hmm.
strong feature film there. We're eating good directorial debuts here.
And I think this has been mentioned and is in conversation of the trajectory of the film industry and where we're headed when we think about directorial debuts and who's the face of, the Hollywood Reporter had a whole section highlighting the future of Hollywood in many ways. And that list was pretty white. And
it's looking white and bright,
not
white,
inclusive
white.
Of people of color. And I think when we think of the industry, it kind of makes sense that those are the people that they'll pick. But to say that those are the only people making great projects. There's, like we said, Alicia Harris from Is God Is. I don't want to just start naming names because I'll forget a lot of them. Ava Victor for Sorry Baby. I think there's a more inclusive list of the trajectory of Hollywood, and we should be excited not just for just the YouTube pipeline, because I think there's a little bit more that's happening that I think people need to unpack, and also say we could rally around all these movies. Everybody could, like you said, we're eating in a lot of ways. And I, as a fan of someone of indie movies, I just always looking out for them. There's a lot of good projects that people should be excited about.
I agree. I think there's a little bit of, I don't know if irony is the right word, but it's very almost kismet that this week we've been talking about these directorial debuts, and our next episode is going to be diving into one of the most prolific directors of all time. Right, we are going from, and you've already mentioned him here on the podcast today, but we're going from a Curry Barker and a Kane Parsons to a Steven Spielberg, because Disclosure Day is upon us. The day of disclosure is here. And so we will be talking about not only Disclosure Day, but also putting Disclosure Day into the context of the rest of Steven Spielberg's filmography. A few episodes back, we talked about watching the entire thing. I have 2 more left before I've completed the canon. I think Derrick has a few more other than that.
I have more than that, but I'll be there. I've locked in, especially this weekend. I'm gonna knock out the ones that I think that's the tough part of. We'll get into it for sure of Spielberg ranking, but his filmography is a little daunting because
It really
so
is.
many of his movies are long, but also you never know what you're gonna get with Spielberg.
Yeah.
I think that will be a great conversation to have. Of some movies are genuinely like, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and then there's other movies where you're like, I'm trudging along to watch this film. And so that makes it a little difficult to watch all of it, but we're excited. Disclosure Day, we're both watching, I believe, this upcoming Monday from
the
when
day
you're
that this
listening.
podcast should be releasing will be the day the
Yeah.
two of us get to be disclosed.
And so if you want to follow our letterbox, that's probably where we'll post, if we can, our reviews on there. And also, I'm sure on our social medias, we will be talking about this movie. This is both of our most anticipated movies of all time. Not of all
Of
time.
all time is wild. Of the summer.
Of the
summer.
Of the summer. Yeah.
Not even
No,
of the year, but of the summer, yes. This is my most anticipated.
Since Daniel was born, this was his most
I
anticipated
knew
movie.
he was going to disclose the day one day. I knew he was just going to disclose it.
And so, yeah, I think it will be a fun conversation to put in context with the rest of his filmography.
Speaking of our socials, and we're going to be talking about these things, Derrick, question for you. Where can people find you?
Well, the people can find me on TikTok and Instagram at simi.views, and also on Letterboxd at simiviews. Write down my more full-length thoughts on there. I'm also working on a website to also get my reviews out on there at simiviews.com. Coming soon, if you're listening to the podcast, just because I know some people want some more of my writings on there, so I'm gonna try my best. Also on YouTube. Those are some of the places you can find me for my personal socials. But what about you, Daniel?
Well, I am clamoring for that website first and foremost. I've been going to the website every single day, not been finding any information, so I can't wait for that's active. You can find me at Daniel Film Therapy on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Threads. Active on Threads right now. I think you can also find Derrick over on Threads as well. And you can also find me. I've been guesting on a bunch of podcasts. And as always, you can find me at Psychology Today at Daniel Westheimer, LCPC over there. But yeah, first and foremost, TikTok is the platform that I think Derrick and I are the most active on. And of course, you can find the Screen Guide podcast on all platforms. I mean, if you're already listening, you know this, but you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on YouTube, and you can find us on Apple. And you can also find us on TikTok, on Instagram, where we'll be doing some clips, doing some polls, doing some fun things like that. And I really hope you do. I hope you come back. We have some really fun episodes planned for the summer. I know that Derrick and I were gone for a little while I was on my honeymoon, but we are back in full force. We'll be doing a lot more consistent content for you all. And I really want to thank you because you've been listening to the Screen Guide podcast.
We've been your guides.
And we've filled the blank this week with Obsession, with Backrooms, and with the best directorial debuts of all time.
So don't forget to put it in your ears.